Hello and welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to our virtual meeting. So let's go ahead and begin. Today we're going to be talking about conversions. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And as always, I do recommend that you do pause this video as you copy the notes. Remember, these notes are also available to you on OneNote. But yes, just pause the video, copy the notes so that you can just follow along as I explain them. So conversions, a conversion is simply changing from one unit to another unit. We're changing from one unit into another unit of the same type. For example, we have these two units of distance, which are meters and kilometers. Changing from meters to kilometers would be a conversion. You can also change from inches to feet, or seconds to hours, degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. All of those would be examples of conversions. And in order to do conversions, ladies and gentlemen, you will be using a unit rate, also known as the conversion rate, but a unit rate. Now, when we hear the word unit, what number do you think about? For those of you who are in class, we discussed this thoroughly. We know that the word unit really means one. It means one. So we have been using unit rates already, and you're going to see that in the examples that we're going to be looking at today. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do this first example. This is not number one from our homework assignment, but it is related to it. So let's use this to see kind of what we're talking about. Please do write this down, by the way. So if you need to pause it and write this down before you continue, please do so. Let's begin. It reads, how many kilometers is 3,000 meters? So how many kilometers, we need to know kilometers, is 3,000 meters? So obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we have two units right here. We have kilometers and meters. We're trying to go from meters to kilometers. And number one, our first step, as always, is to write down the word fraction. Okay. By now, you've hopefully realized that in all of these problems, we're always going to end up with three fractions, the first of which is the word fraction, all right, which is simply what are the two units that we are comparing? What are the two units that we are comparing? All right, so in this case, we're obviously comparing kilometers. So I'm going to write down km for kilometers. That's supposed to be a K. So km for kilometers. And I'm going to be comparing that to meters, kilometers to meters, right? Now, step number 2 and step number 3 are actually interchangeable. It doesn't matter which you do first, as long as you do both of them. But in this case, we are given 3,000 meters. And so I'm going to make my second fraction, and 3,000 meters will go on the denominator so that it's lined up with the meters here in the word fraction. Now, obviously, I do not know how many kilometers that is. That's what I'm trying to find out. We're trying to see how many kilometers is the same thing as 3,000 meters. Finally, step number 3, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to write the unit rate. That's going to be my third fraction. So I have my word fraction. I have my ratio here with information from the problem. And finally, I'm going to write the unit rate. All right, the unit rate. Essentially, we're asking which one of those two units is larger? Which one of those two units is larger? So out of kilometers and meters, or between kilometers and meters, the larger one is kilometers. So I'm going to put a large number 1 with the kilometers. I'm going to put a large number 1 along with kilometers because that is larger than meters. And then we will ask ourselves, how many meters are in a kilometer? How many meters are in a kilometer? And we know that it is 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. Mr. Lugo, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you expect me to know that there's 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer? Well, there's a few ways that you can do that. Number 1, you can simply follow the conversion chart that I gave you on OneNote. In fact, if you go to OneNote and if you click on the Home tab, so you should have your name, but if you click on Home, you will see that there is a reference chart or a conversion chart there, and you can find that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. Now, obviously, this does not have all the conversions in the world, but it has a lot that, that might be useful to you. All right, so that's where I got 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Another way that you can figure that out is to know that the word kilo, like from kilometer, kilo simply means, that means 1,000. So if you have a kilometer, that means 1,000 meters. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. In the same way that 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams, etc. All right, so now I have my 3 fractions right here. Essentially, it's really just 2 fractions, but if you include the word fraction, that is 3 fractions. And so we're going to solve this the exact same way that we would do any other equivalent ratios, right? X over 3,000 is equal to 1 over 1,000. So I can go from 3,000 to 1,000 by dividing by 3. In other words, X divided by 3 should give me 1. I can work the other way though. If 3,000 divided by 3 is equal to 1,000, that means that 1,000 times 3, 1,000 times 3 is 3,000, right? So that means that to get to this fraction, I can do 1 times 3 as well. And 1 times 3 is equal to 3. So 3,000 meters is the same thing as 3 kilometers. 3 kilometers. That's one way to do it, and that's how we're going to do most of these problems. However, remember that you can also use equivalent, you can also use cross multiplication to make an equation. In this case, one side is going to have 1,000 times x, which is just 1,000x. The other side is going to be 3,000 times 1, which is just 3,000. And remember, my goal is always to isolate the variable. So I want this x to be all by itself. And in order to do that, I'm going to divide by 1,000 to get rid of that 1,000. But whatever I do to one side, I will do to the other. And I'm going quickly because we should know how to do this already. So 3,000 divided by 1,000 will give me 3. So again, that means that it's 3 kilometers for 3,000 meters. And that's pretty much it. Again, remember, we are first finding our word fraction. What are the 2 things? What are the 2 units that we are comparing? In this case, it was kilometers and meters. Number 2, just fill in the information from the paragraph. Or the sentence in this case, we have 3,000 meters. So I put 3,000 in the denominator alongside with meters. We want to know, well, how many kilometers is that? And then we did our unit rate, which one is bigger. We know that kilometers are bigger than meters, so that kilometers is the bigger one. So I put a 1 in kilometers, and then I use my chart to see that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. You can also just easily look that up online. How many meters in a kilometer? 1 kilometer is how many meters? And it will easily tell you. And you can use that to fill this in. And then now we just solve for the missing value. All right, so with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and do our first problem from Schoology. So if you go to Schoology, up to conversions, we see here in number 1. Number 1, it reads, John rode, so this is John. John rode 2 kilometers in his bike. His sister Sally rode 3,000 meters. Okay, so notice how we have kilometers over here, we have meters over here, so we already have different units. The question is, who rode the furthest and by how much? How much further did they ride? But they want us to answer in kilometers. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to pause this and try it on your own. And then hit resume so you can see if you did what I did. So I see that I'm going to have to change everything to kilometers. So already this is already in kilometers, so this is fine. But this is in meters. I need to change this to kilometers, and that's exactly what I did in my example in my notes, right? So right here we're going to go from meters to kilometers, if you will. So I'm writing meters on the numerator to show you that it doesn't matter if you put which you put on the numerator or denominator, as long as you stay consistent. So we are given 3,000 meters, so I'm going to put that in the numerator because that's meters. But we need to know, well, how many kilometers or kilometers that is. All right, and now which one is bigger, a meter or kilometer? We know that a kilometer is bigger, so that's the bigger one. So I'm going to put a big 1 right down here with kilometers. And how many meters is 1 kilometer? We know that that is 1,000 meters. It's exactly what we did in the example. All right. If 1,000 times 3, that's going to give me 3,000. I have to multiply 1 times 3, and that gives me 3. That means that it's 3,000 meters is 3 kilometers. 3 kilometers. I might as well just scratch this out so that now I have the same unit. So John rode 2 kilometers. Sally rode 3 kilometers. Who rode the most? Who rode the furthest? That would obviously be Sally. Make sure you type it up in capital with capital S, Sally. And then by how much? Well, she rode 3, he rode 2, 3 minus 2. She rode more by 1 kilometer. Just put 1, don't put km because that's already given to you right there. Pretty simple. Awesome, let's go ahead and do the next one. Again, I encourage you to pause it and see what is our word fraction? What are the two things that we're comparing? All right, so assuming that you've already read it and at least wrote down the two things that we're comparing, we see that Jessica's measuring 2 line segments. The first is 30 centimeters long, okay, 30 centimeters. The second one is 500 millimeters long. Okay, so again, we have 2 different units. How long are the 2 segments together? And we want to answer in centimeters. So obviously, if I'm going to put them together, I eventually have to add them together. But I cannot add centimeters and millimeters because they're different units. So we want it in centimeters. So I'm going to change this 500 millimeters. I'm going to change this into centimeters. All right. So I'm going to go from millimeters to centimeters. Right. And at this point, why don't we ask ourselves, which one is larger, centimeters or millimeters? Which one is larger? So centimeters is the larger one. So I'm going to put a 1 by centimeters, or down here with centimeters. And we know that from our conversion chart, if you go and see it, I can actually go ahead and do that. You will find that that 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. So 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. Okay, so for my third fraction, again, by now you know that we have our word fraction, we have our ratio or our unit rate. And so now in this case, since I have my unit rate, let's put the information from the passage. We are given 500 millimeters, and we want to change that to centimeters. So we have 500 millimeters, and we want to change that to centimeters. How many centimeters is that? 500 millimeters. All right, just by looking at this, I can tell that if I were to multiply 10 times 50, that would give me 500. If you didn't know that, you can always divide 500 by 10 and see what that gives you. That would give you 50. So 10 times 50 is 500. So 1 times 50 is 50. That means my x is equal to 50. You have 50 centimeters in 500 millimeters. So I can just scratch this out and just put a 50. So the first segment is 30 centimeters. The second segment is 50 centimeters. All right, the answer is not 50 because it's asking how long are they together, meaning I have to add 30 and 50. Ladies and gentlemen, 30 plus 50 is equal to 80. The 2 segments together are 80 centimeters. 80 centimeters. All right, moving on to the next one. Again, don't just put the answer, have it in your notebook, make sure you have all 3. In fact, I challenge you that as you're doing these, go ahead and write 3 fractions or 3 fraction bars and just fill them in. 3 fraction bars and fill them in beginning with the word fraction, okay? Number 3, Mary buys a reel of thread for sewing. There are 10 meters of thread on the reel. That should be 2 E's on the reel. She uses 210 centimeters. How much is left on the reel in centimeters? So we want it in centimeters. How much is left? So we have 10 meters. This is about a meter right here. Is about a meter stick. So there's 10 of these put together. That's how long this string is wrapped around this reel. We're going to use 210 of that, meaning we're going to take it away. We're going to subtract 210 from those 10 meters. but I can't do that unless we have this in centimeters. So let's go ahead and work this out together. So we are beginning with meters and we want to change that to centimeters. That is my word fraction. Those are the two things that I'm comparing. Pause this right now and go ahead and see if you can fill it in. Which one is larger? Which one is larger, meters or centimeters? Okay, obviously meters is the larger one. And we have 100 centimeters in 1 meter. I know that from the conversion chart, or you can just look at the prefix centi. Centi means out of 100 or 1/100th. Think of a cent. So how many cents are in a dollar? There's 100 cents in a dollar. So how many centimeters are in a meter? There's 100 centimeters for 1 meter. Very good. And so now we are given 10 meters. So I'm going to put that on the numerator. We're asking, well, how many centimeters is that? There are my 3 fractions. All right, let's go forward. I know that 1 times 10 is 10, so I have to multiply 100 times 10. Ladies and gentlemen, 100 times 10 is 1,000. That means that 10 meters is really 1,000 centimeters. All right. So we have 1,000 centimeters. We're going to use 210 of them. So let's go ahead and work that out. We have 1,000 minus 210. And when you work that out, you are going to get, I'm moving kind of quickly because you should know how to do this already. 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 minus 2 is 7. Make sure you show me your work. We have 790 centimeters of string left on the reel. Perfect. Moving on. Question number 4. We have 30 grams. We have 30 grams of a certain breakfast cereal. And that has 5 grams of salt. How much salt would that be in milligrams? Just really quickly, guys, this is asking, so just getting the important information. We have 30 grams of cereal, 30 grams, and it has 5 grams of salt. We're asking, well, how much salt would that be in milligrams? So obviously we don't care about the cereal, so I'm just going to cross that out. We don't really care about the cereal. So we're just wondering about the salt. Essentially, we're asking how much is 0.5 grams in milligrams. All right, so I encourage you to pause it and fill in the 3 fractions. What is the word fraction? What is our unit rate? And what is the ratio that is given to us? So go ahead and pause and try that on your own. All right, I'm assuming that you already did that. And so really we're comparing grams to milligrams. It doesn't matter if you do the if you do the ratio first or the unit rate first. So if I do the ratio, I see that we have 0.5 grams here, 0.5 grams. And we want to know how much that is in milligrams. What is larger? What is the larger one? Grams or milligrams? Grams is the larger one. And milli again means 1,000. There's 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram. So 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. And now let's go ahead and work this out. Half or 0.5 times 2 is 1, right? So 1 divided by 2 is going to give me 0.5. So if I divide 1,000 by 2, that means that x will equal to 500. You could have also done it as a cross multiplication to make an equation. You can do 1 times x or 1x, which is just x on one side, 1,000 times 0.5 on the other, which is equal to 500. Notice how x is equal to 500, just like that. So that means that there are 500 milligrams in 0.5 grams. Pretty simple. All right, I'm gonna let you do number 5 by yourself because it's super simple. You're just changing 200 milliliters into centimeters. That is straight from the chart. Okay, the chart tells you how many millimeters are in a centimeter. Make sure you have all three fractions. You have your two. I'll get you started on it, but we have our three fractions. Our word fraction is going to be millimeters and 2 centimeters, and we know that 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. And from there, you are given 200 millimeters. And we want to know how many centimeters that is. There it is. You can figure it out. Try that one on your own. I'm moving on to number 6. And actually, looking at number 6, you can also do that one on your own. That one is pretty simple. You're going from kilometers to meters. So try that on your own. But let's go ahead and do number 7 together, and then I'll let you do number 8 on your own. Number 7. Carlos has a 1.2 meter long piece of wood. He wants to cut it into 3 equal lengths. How long will each piece be in millimeters? So because I want everything in millimeters, let me first change this meters into millimeters, okay? So let's go ahead and do my 3 fractions. I have my word fraction, my unit rate, and my ratio. So we're going from meters to millimeters. And we know that 1 meter is 1,000 millimeters. Milli means 1,000, or out of 1,000 actually. Kilo means 1,000, milli means out of 1,000. And we are given 1.2 meters, and we want to know how many millimeters that is. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, how do I get from 1 to 1.2? I'm obviously going to multiply because it's getting bigger, but 1 times 1.2 is equal to 1.2, right? 1 times 1.2 is 1.2. So multiply 1,000 by 1.2, and you get that x is equal to 1,200. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is not my answer. That is just the initial length of the wood. But what do I need to do to this initial length of the wood? I need to cut it or divide it into 3 equal parts. So we do 1,200 divided by 3, and that's going to give you 400. Each piece will be 400 millimeters long. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I realized I was a little fast. I didn't want this video to be too long, but I hope you found this helpful. And if you still have any more questions, we can address those later. Okay, so I'll be seeing you guys soon.